Hello and welcome back to another YouTube video. Today I'm going to be covering the patch 13.7 notes, so let's get into it. It's quite a big patch. There's a lot of MSI focused changes here. So these are pretty big towards the overall jungle meta at the moment, and that hopefully should shake things up, make MSI more interesting with a couple of the more popular champions. Well, yeah, most of them are relatively popular, things like Graves, Katarina, Yasuo are being buffed, maybe make a showing in MSI, but we'll have to see about that. So let's get into it. To begin with, Alistar is gaining 3 base armor and 15 base health. This is just going to help him with some early trades, and it's going to be about 2 more autos during laning phase. So overall, it helps Alistar survive that laning phase, and this is a high amount of health to have combined with a pretty high amount of armor. It will just make him relatively tanky. That will also benefit his ult, just giving him a lot of value within that. It's quite nice. So, expect to see Alistar with an MSI. I do think he is a worthwhile champ to pick. Annie is receiving enough towards her support role. 12 to 8 now becomes 12 to 10. And the shield amount is going down by 20 at the later ranks. This overall isn't going to hurt mid that much, as you tend to max this last. But it will help. It will hurt support a lot where you tend to max this first. So that's going to mainly be where the problem lies. I imagine Annie's still going to be picked mid in MSI. She might become 100% or at least 80% plus presence. So we'll have to see that. Azir is now going to have a bunch of changes towards his kit, just trying to help his win rate out quite a bit. He's currently quite low down there at the moment. WMAX is the way to go on this champion, and they're trying to push it even further with this patch. So base armor is going up by 3, attack speed growth is going up by 1%, duration on the passive is going up by 15 seconds for cast range, so the range of where you can put this turret up is now going to match his Q range, I believe, or like the WQ range, or at least it's going to be close to make it feel nicer to use. The Q is going to have its mana cost increase more aggressively again. 65 to 85 becomes 70 to 110. And the stab range is going down by a relatively small amount of 45. W Rise is going to have its damage changed from 0 to 110 based on level to 0 to 92 based on level. But the overall scaling of the ability is going to increase from 50 to 90 to 50 to 118. And the mana cost is going to be reduced from 40 to 40 to 20 scaling. This is overall quite a nice buff towards W. Expect to see W Max performing quite well. It wouldn't surprise me if this is actually close to 50% win rate. And then they're going to change the recommended skill order to be recommending W Max first, because it's still recommended Q this patch. For Graves, the crit build is going to be buffed from 20 to 30%. There is about 3% win rate to gain here. I had a look before this when I was doing my mock-up for the patch notes. And the R collateral damage is going to have its cooldown reduced by 20 at base rank, which is a relatively decent amount. You might be able to get 1 or 2 more casts off of this in a game, but overall these are mostly just going to be placebo. We won't see very many crit variations of Graves. This will mainly help lane Graves if lane Graves suddenly makes a reappearance with these buffs, but I don't believe it will. I think Ravenous lane Graves is not in a great spot at the moment, but there are people which will try and make it work, definitely, so maybe there is something there. Kalista is having her attack damage growth increased by 0.25, and her passive is now going to be cast quicker, so that duration of where the lockout duration at the beginning of the game where you are forced to be killed and then revived, there's now going to be a shorter duration, which means that you can maybe get out, well, you can get out of gates quicker. Overall, just nice quality of life. So it's a very relatively small buff towards Kalista. I don't think this would do a lot. Katarina is going to have her passive increased on the AP ratio from 65 to 95% scaling to 70 to 100%, which is a relatively big amount. The Death Lotus physical damage is going to go down, but it's going to increase with bonus attack speed. This will hurt the Divine Cinder or Rush builds, but it will help those builds which have a lot of attack speed. Things like Bork, Wit's End, and Nash's are going to be really key to focus on here. This will definitely help the Nash's build if you're picking up some AD amongst it. So if you're maybe starting D-Blade and then you're opting into the Nash's, does help it. Kha'Zix is going to have his Q isolation range reduced, which is quite nice. And it's more of just a QOL, but it does have value. The W is going to have less slow, and the evolved slow against isolated targets is also going to go down. The buff duration on R, however, is going to have a bit more length to it. So these are relatively quality of life. This is a pretty, it's a big nerf, but at the same time, it's not as big as some people are making it out to be. So yeah, I mean, this should keep him power neutral, but for those W max, or the not W max, the W builds where you evolve W fast and you go more util with like your cleavers and stuff like this, it's definitely going to hurt those. Lee Sin is losing 2 base attack damage and 2 base armor. This is mainly just to tap him before MSI to make sure he doesn't suddenly take over. The E-buffs were quite nice to him beforehand. Olaf is losing attack speed on the passive 60 to 100%, for 250 to 100% based on level. This is a relatively small nerf. That combined with only losing 5 at all ranks on Q isn't going to do a huge amount to Olaf. Olaf will still reign supreme. Well, he might not reign as supreme in the top lane, but he's still going to be one of the better picks up there, definitely. He can just run over most of the top lane pool at the moment. He does have a couple of bad matchups, but for the most part, he does counter a lot of champions. Rammus is going to have his bonus armor on W change from 40 to 100% total armor to 40 to 80% total armor. This is really going to hurt those W max second builds, and lane Rammus will probably take the biggest hit here, and this will probably, if anything, just remove it altogether. This is a huge nerf, losing 20% of total armor. That's really, really bad for Rammus. Sejuani is having the damage cap against epic monsters reduced from 300 to 250. The Q is having its cooldown change from 18 to 12 to 19 to 13, and the R cooldown is going up by 10 seconds at all rank. This is not a huge nerf to Sejuani. This is going to do something towards her being able to rotate 2 Qs in a fight, and maybe lose 1 R during a game. This will hurt her objective taking. This is probably only going to drag her down maybe like 0.5, 0.75% win rate. I don't imagine this does a lot. The key problem with Sejuani at the moment is she has quite a lot. I mean, all of her abilities are a form of CC or slow or soft CC, and in turn that just makes it really valuable within a pro environment. The R also has a lot of value, being a long range CC ability with a small amount of a large amount of AoE to it. So she'll continue to be a problem. I imagine her presence may drop a bit, but not a huge amount. Fresh Q cooldown refund on hit is going to be reduced by 1 second. This is to reduce those times where you can chain CC on this champion. Once you have a lot of points in Q, it can make him really powerful. This 3 seconds, what made it so if you had a bit of CDR, you could just constantly chain CC someone. 2 seconds makes it a bit more forgiving, but it's still going to be pretty strong. Fresh is a very good support at the moment, definitely in a good spot. Veigar is having his kit changed a decent amount to push him more towards scaling, more than he already was. QAP ratio is going to be changed from 45 to 65, from 60% all ranks to 45 to 65%. The AP ratio on the W is going to be changed from 100 to 70 to 110. The E is now going to no longer hide if it's placed in a wall, well, in certain walls. And the R is going to have its AP ratio reduced earlier on into the game. Now changed from 75 to 65 to 75. These are really big nerfs towards Veigar. I imagine he's going to lose a lot of win rate from these. Even though these are tailored towards late game, which is where solo queue tends to be a lot more favored, this will just in general make him a lot more susceptible to being punished early game, where his damage is just going to be really heavily down, like 10, 30, 15 level at level 1. Of course, when you get points in queue, this is still going to be down a decent amount. So I expect Veigar to be completely dead out of pro play. This is just this is killing the champion. This, as much as he could end up with a positive win rate out of solo queue, I don't imagine this is enough. Like, this will just absolutely murder the champ, at least in high elo. Low elo might survive. He might survive. Vi is going to be losing some base damage on the Q, 10 at all ranks, and gaining 10% bonus AD on the scaling. The E is going to be losing, well, it's supposed to be 10 to 90 to 0 to 60. And the AD ratio is going to be 110 to 120 to, and 90 AP to 100% AP. So overall, big nerfs towards Vi. These are really going to hurt her early game clear. I imagine this probably, there's a chance this does take the champ out to pro play. I imagine some people will still try and make it work. But for the most part, these are really big nerfs towards early game clear, which is where Vi had a lot of value, as you could clear quickly and set up really good ganks. So losing a lot of clear value, but this also probably makes it so E max isn't and you're going to start W maxing second instead of E max. So we'll have to see how that one goes. Wukong is losing 2 base AD. He's losing 22. He's losing 2 seconds at later ranks on the W, and the E is losing 5% attack speed at all ranks. It kind of sucks they've gone this way with Wukong. It would have been nice if they just reduced the damage on the E towards jungle monsters, because this really hurts top lane Wukong. Top lane Wukong was in a relatively balanced state, and I know a lot of people played top lane Wukong, so this is a really big first bad towards the champion. This jungle Wukong probably still survives this. This actually probably hurts top lane Wukong more, if anything. Yasuo is gaining passive shield at later ranks by 100. The E is being changed that it now increases by 20%. Instead of increasing by 25% of E's base damage, it now increases by 15 to 25% of E's total damage. Scales linearly, and it now has a maximum stack count of 2 to, goes from 2 to 4. So relatively big buffs towards Yasuo. This should make him feel a lot better to play later on into the game, and his E should do a meaningful amount of damage if you have the 4 stacks on it and you're using the waves correctly. Zeri losing 15 health growth, which is a decent amount for an ADC. Passive shield is losing 15%, and her R is losing 15% bonus AD on it. These are pretty big nerfs towards Zeri. This is definitely going to hurt her on solo queue. I don't imagine this does as much in pro, but I imagine this does lower her pro presence. She was probably the highest pro ADC coming into this patch. And overall, just lowering her survivability and a bit of her damage on her R is a pretty good way about going cutting down the champ a peg. Death Stance is losing 10 attack damage, gaining 15 ability haste, and losing 5 armor. This is a revert back to old Death Stance, which is still a pretty bad item, if anything. The heal is pretty minimal, and the overall mitigation is where the real value is going to come in this item. I honestly reckon Death Stance is in a pretty bad spot at the moment, and if they were to, they probably should have buffed it a slight bit more, but we'll have to see, because it is gold efficient. It's just about gold efficient with this new stat line. That combined with the heal, which is unlike the passive which you're buying into, I don't think that makes the item good enough to be considered like OP, but I think it still will have a place relative to certain champions which value the ability haste more than just the flat out attack damage. Catalyst is being changed to give 75 more health, but it's going to cost 200 more. The combined cost is also going to go up by 200. That's where the gold increase is going to come from. Abyssal Mask is having its combined cost reduced. Because of the Catalyst of Aeons, and its health is going to go up by 50. Roa is going to have its combined cost reduced by 200 as well. Grievous Wounds update is now going to be changed so it applies on targets with shields. ARAM adjustments, Clash, or next week, where I'll probably make an updated tier list with this patch in mind. And off-screen pings. Cool. Behavioral systems, just detection towards verbal abuse and intentional feeding. Couple of challenges. So just a nice thing for the more casual audience. A couple of competitive changes. So they're implementing the normal surrender vote, where 4 out of 5 is let's have a look. Normal surrender 4 out of 5 70% is available at 20 minutes now 15 minutes. I'm pretty sure this is what it's supposed to be. It's something along those lines. And that's mostly it. A lot of bug fixes. Cool new skins of Yuumi, Nidalee, Kindred, and Kled. Cool chromas as well. So those are my thoughts for the patch. If you enjoy the content, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.